Welcome to How to Gym, the series where I break down all of the gym stuff that no one ever teaches you, but everyone expects you to know. Today, we're talking about the Romanian deadlift, or the RDL, and why so many people feel them in their lower back instead of their glutes. Sounds basic, but thinking you're too advanced for the basics is exactly where most people go wrong. Today, I'm going to walk you through how exactly to fix your form, brace properly, use straps if you need them, and finally feel your glutes doing the work. Let's get into it. The Romanian deadlift is the king of all glute exercises. Will I get in trouble for saying that? People will be like, what about the hip thrust? No one gets taught how to hip hinge properly. There are three extremely common mistakes that almost all of my clients seem to make when doing a Romanian deadlift. The first common mistake is using too much range of motion. This essentially means that you're going too low. You need to find the right range of motion for you and your goals. But if you're experiencing lower back pain, you're new to the gym, or you're essentially learning this exercise for the first time, you should modify your range of motion to avoid going too low. The reason for this is that if you go too low, you tend to extend outside of your active range of motion. And this essentially means that you move the load from your glutes onto your lower back. Lower is not better. A cue that I like to use for clients is to stop when you notice that your hips are not moving back anymore. You see, most people just think of picking the bar up and putting it back down, but the hip hinge is actually more of a horizontal movement rather than an up-down movement. You want to think of your hips going back and forward. And when it comes to range of motion, there will be a point where you're not exactly extending at the hips anymore, you're actually extending through your lower back. Now, a position that I tend to find that works really well for most people is about mid-shin height. You don't need to take the bar all the way down to the ground. In fact, I actually recommend that you don't. The second most common mistake, which tends to cause lower back pain, is hyperextending at the top. Now, instead of focusing on actually squeezing your glutes or keeping your chest tall, I want you to think about flexing your quads instead. Now, flexing your quads might seem strange, but what this forces you to do is really lock out at the hips without overextending at the top. The other really helpful cue that I've found helps with hyperextending is keeping long arms. So rather than thinking about pulling your chest up, I want you to think about keeping long, dead arms instead of flexing and tilting back. This also helps to prevent you from pulling the bar, because a lot of people seem to row the bar rather than actually using their hips to drive up, flexing their quads, and just keeping long, dead arms to do the work. Another really helpful cue for this very common mistake is thinking about squeezing your armpits. The reason for this is your lats, which is this muscle down the side here, is almost a part of your core, and it helps to engage the rest of your body as well as brace properly. Most people have never been taught how to brace properly. A lot of people think that bracing is just like sucking in your stomach, but it's actually not. I'm going to take you through a quick exercise so that you can really tune into your body to know what it feels like to truly brace properly. Come down into this position. You're going to bring your legs up so they're just over your hips. You're going to push your knees forward into your hands. You're actually going to notice that all these core muscles turn on and activate, but not just your six pack. You're also going to notice these side muscles, actually really hard. Shaking a little bit. You're going to feel what it feels like to brace. Goal is to maintain that same tension when you take your hands away. It's not just about flexing your six pack, it's about keeping your obliques and all these other little muscles around your core activated too. Another really quick one to remember is being punched in the guts. I always like this cue because it gives you that sense of really flexing your core and bracing down. Just imagine that someone's punching you in the stomach. That'll help you brace rather than suck in. Mistake number 3, and look, probably the most common one, to be honest, is lifting too much weight. Honestly, whether you're new to the gym or not, you should never be lifting more weight than what your body can handle. You're not a power lifter. You're here to build your glutes, build your body, and actually build strength, because you shouldn't be pushing to a point where you feel shaky, wobbly, or you can't maintain solid technique. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go super light. Of course I'm not. But there's going to be a point where lifting any more weight actually breaks down your technique and stops you from keeping the tension in the right places, like your glutes. And this is often why we hyperextend, or we shift the load to other muscles inside our body that we really don't want to shift it to. It's not about lifting the most weight. It's about lifting the right amount of weight for you, your experience, and your goals. And finally, using lifting straps, if you need them, of course. But I'm going to show you exactly how and when to use lifting straps to get the most out of your Romanian deadlifts. Now, there's a lot of people online that say using wrist straps is cheating. Please don't listen to them. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Wrist straps is not cheating at all. Now, I'm a big fan of everyone learning how to build strength and deadlift without them, but there will come a point where your grip strength or your forearm strength will be the limiting factor. If your glutes and hamstrings are not stronger than your grip strength or your forearms, I don't know, like that's a little bit concerning. I wish someone showed me this, guys. Like I spent years using these incorrectly and not properly, or just not using them at all, to be honest, because I wasn't quite sure how to put them on. So I'm gonna run you through a really quick demo. So the most important thing when you put them on is that you wanna make sure the loop is over the top of your hand here. And one thing I always like to do is that your thumb is in line with the direction that the wrist strap is pointing. Now, there was a period where I was like, and I had no idea, guys. You're going to grip the bar firmly and the strap will come underneath, right? This is actually when you want to pull it around to make it really tight. Then you're going to fold the top of the strap over the barbell and you're going to rev it like a motorbike. I like going twice. I know some people just prefer to wrap once, twice for small hands, and then you're going to rev it again. So when you're revving it, what this is actually doing is it's tightening the wrist strap around your wrists. So it should feel really nice and secure. Well, you want to make sure that you're gripping so that your hands are just comfortably by your sides. Generally for me, it's just on the inside of this ring for a normal Romanian deadlift. Now this second one's always the hardest, isn't it? Because you can't use that hand, but honestly, if you just flick it over, you get better over time at using wrist straps. At the start, it's a little bit awkward and you're like, what the hell am I doing? But you really don't need to have them super tight to the point that they're cutting off circulation. I use these for most pulling exercises. I'll often use them for any rowing sort of exercise. So whether that's a dumbbell row, any row or back exercise, I find them really helpful to use. However, I also do have training blocks and phases where I don't use them. And I think this is important too, because depending on your goals, when my focus is on more muscle building, I will use wrist straps a lot because I don't really care about my grip strength. But there are periods where I'm focusing more on just raw strength, and maybe I'm doing sets of like 2 or 3 reps where I actually just want to use the force of my grip, train my grip, and I'm not so focused on using wrist straps. So just make sure that you're rotating it, and also just make sure that you know what your goals are, because you never want to become reliant on any one lifting accessory. Now, a little bit of a tip, because this one, my goodness, it was so helpful for me over the years when I was experiencing lower back pain, is actually setting the bar up like this. Avoid, when possible, pulling the bar from the floor. Obviously, if you're doing a conventional deadlift, that's the exercise, so you need to do that. But when you're doing a Romanian deadlift, all the work is done on the way down, right? So you don't need to have the bar on the ground and almost like fatigue your lower back. You're better off setting it up from here so that you can really unrack it just from a solid height, and then you can step back and then really start the exercise from the top rather than starting it from the bottom. If you enjoyed today's video, I know you're going to love this video right here, where I break down my 3 favorite glute building exercises, how to do them properly, and how to include them into your current training program.